The Clambake, over Innsmouth. Prologue. It was a dark and stormy night. Suboptimal conditions for a sword fight with the mayor of Innsmouth on top of a zeppelin, with neither of us having eaten dinner, and the smell of clambakes at 20,000 feet wafting warmly from the open windows of the gondola below. Mayor Clementine and I halted in the middle of our tooth and nail thrust and parry battle to wipe the drool off our mouths, because we both knew that when human saliva forms covalent bonds with fresh New England rainwater, the resulting liquid suspension is twice as slippery as greased-up wombats. We also knew that freshly steaming clams served with a side of corn, potatoes, carrots, and onions awaited the victor of this duel. You might be wondering how I got myself into this situation, constantly trying to push the angry, overgrown grandfather of gramophone needle away from my face, with my empty tummy rumbling, and wearing my least favorite sweater, all while crossing swords with the highest-ranking municipal official of a decaying port town while atop a zeppelin, where a single misstep could send me careening into the frothing waters of the Atlantic Ocean from so high up that its sheet gray waves would flatten me like an indelicately baked souffle. Well, detach your ears from your head and place them in my finger hub, and I'll tell you all about it. I call palms finger hubs because I believe the word palms offends God the moon. And if you say that particular word 3 times within the span of 73 hours, on the 3rd time, the moon, who is God, will punish you by constantly teleporting beavers into your pants for 12 entire years. And I didn't want that to happen, because then I'd have to wear pants all the time. And I hate wearing pants. The reason I hate wearing pants is because a pair of pants killed my parents right when I was born. My first words were a vow of vengeance against every pair of pants I ever saw. But if I didn't wear pants while being cursed by the moon god for saying words she didn't like too much, then in the absence of pants, the beavers would end up teleported into the sun, who was a giant, self-important bastard instead. I couldn't have the deaths of those thousands of beavers on my hands, nor my conscience, so I chose not to say that word a 3rd time, which is what I am explaining to you right now. Chapter 1. It all began a couple days ago when I received a call for a job investigating the disappearance of a local boy off working at some coastal town named Innsmouth for the summer. A job I needed to take so I could have money to spend on whiskey, and maybe an office for my detective business. Even though it was a phone call, the smoky, sultry voice spilling over from the other end of the line made me imagine this dame walking into my office. A dame with a face like an angel, and legs that won't quit. Won't quit what? I don't know. Existing, I suppose. If your legs stopped existing, I told the dame, we'd be stuck in my office forever. Except I don't have one. Though, if you didn't have legs, I bet we could both fit inside this telephone booth I'm talking to you from at the same time. What are you talking about? The dame said. I thought I called the police to report my missing boyfriend? Who is this? Oh, I'm sure that's what you intended to do, sweetheart. I draw up in an accent I slip into whenever I say the word sweetheart. But the thing is, sometimes, when an extraordinary case gets called in, that phone call ends up at my desk instead. Because sometimes I rewire the phone lines for the payphone booth down the street. After all, I am Greg Nightmare, the Commodore of detectives in this town, and I am here to solve your murder. She said some stuff after that, but I stopped listening, because my keen detective mind was already at work sifting through the information that doe-eyed dame delivered in her dulcet tones, already grasping at straws so I could stick them into a tall, cold glass of Enigma and quench my food thirst. The lower half of my face always goes bone dry at the start of an investigation, and solving mysteries is the only way to moisten my mouthy bits. I let the phone fall like a bungee jumper, dangling at the end of its stainless steel-sheathed cord, swinging within the payphone booth like a pendulum inside a grandfather clock, and I strode out into the city streets, charting a course towards through perplexity and danger to get to Truth Island, clandestine power walking away like a man who doesn't want to get arrested by the sheriff for rewiring the police telephone lines to intercept 911 calls for the 3rd time this month. You've got to hustle to get ahead in life. So I hustled my moneymaker into the welcoming lamp of public transportation, hoping my shimmying would soon strike oil. Chapter 2. As I rode the trolley down to the edge of town, I tried to predict the past, and therefore the future. The missing person, or Misper, in detective lingo, had a name. Illegal. Illegal, why are you doing this? Or so the dame had said on the phone. You can never simply trust intel a client feeds you, even if she's got eyes like an iguana, and lips as sensual and shapely as a carrion bird gliding in circles above a slowly asphyxiating phrenologist. Sometimes clients lie, for gain, for kicks, Mexican jumping beans, and always at the expense of a down-on-his-luck gumshoe. There's all sorts in this cruel and senseless world. A world where tepid beer gets served in fine china. A world where wombats have not yet been domesticated. A world where I can't play the accordion. The trolley stops. End of the line. The road. Where the sidewalk's courage finally failed, left it stranded, the last streetlight on the crumbling west side of this sorry excuse for civilization. The Whisperer hadn't been heard from in 3 weeks, and the client says he normally calls her every night, even after he moved into Innsmouth. Innsmouth. I've heard things about Innsmouth. Dark things. Roasted things. Things with a pleasantly acidic twang that clamps down like a voluptuous bear trap at the back of your tongue, right where your taste buds like it, mixed in with a swirl of cigarette smoke-stained moonlight. I've heard the coffee at Innsmouth is the best in the tri-state area, and yet even better than the coffee are the Clambakes. And that's when I came up with my plan. I'll need a Clambake judge uniform, I said to no one, because the trolley left 20 minutes ago. But where will I find bright yellow overalls and eel-skin elbow-length gloves at this hour? It was only while hunting pigeons for sustenance that I remembered Clambake judge uniforms are phased out in favor of a free dress policy by the Clambake Council back in 1925, because the president was concerned about the number of barriers that the council had established betwixt themselves and the common folk over the years. Which meant I could wear anything and my dress would be fine as long as I used official Clambake judge terminology. And it just so happens I majored in Clambake judging back at detective school, along with a minor in sword fighting. Even though it had been years since I put either skill to use, Clambake judging is just like baking and judging a bike. Just one of those things you never completely forget how to do. I set off towards town, pulled towards the maglev train. That maglev train's superconducting electromagnets were beckoned only by the magnetized siren call of mysteries. Chapter 3. And so I arrived at Innsmouth, dressed like a Clambake judge who decided to dress like a detective. All the locals kept asking me if I was a detective, and I would tell them, no, I'm actually a Clambake judge. Infiltration successful. I'm here to look at you while you bake clams, I said to the drab denizens of Innsmouth playing pinball and bobbing for apples in the town square, and write down numbers that tell you how bad you did. They nodded their understanding and pointed me to the mayor's house, which is very large. Hello there, honored guest, said a man as he walked out of the large brick building, awaiting me at the steps. I am Ernest Clementine, the mayor of Innsmouth. How do you like our fair town? Clementine was wearing a green jacket over a brown waistcoat and matching slacks, and also a sash that said Mayor draped diagonally across his torso in the right direction. He had a look about him like he was good at swords and was concerned about his town's recent dire economic straits. Mr. Mayor, your town looks like a stray dog chewing on an old boot on Christmas Eve, just when you finally come to terms with the truth that nobody wants to spend the holidays with you. So you chew on the boot too, and then the dog growls, but it's too tired to do anything about it, so you both chew on the boot together until New Year's. And your mayor house is way big, bigger than the moon. It's so big, it looks empty. It looks hungry, like my stomach, as I await the Clambake time. Tell me, Mr. Mayor, when is the Clambake time? Oh, it should begin within the hour, said the mayor. I believe the engineers are just doing some last-minute inspections of the Zeppelin and then we should be off. I know all about that, I told him. This isn't my first New England Clambake. This is the first mayor house I've been to which is bigger than the moon, which means it is bigger than God, because the moon is God, and is one specific word away from teleporting beavers into my pants for a dozen straight years, or maybe the sun. I've hated pants since I was born, or to be more precise, 5 seconds after I was born, because if it weren't for pants, my parents would still be alive. You need to know my backstory, because you look good at swords to me. Changing the subject, by any chance do you know a kid by the name of... I forgot his name. If you could let me borrow your phone, I can call the dame who wants to find him, a dame whom I'm definitely not working for, and she could tell you what his name is, which has nothing to do with why I am here. Clementine gestured at the phone on the desk, so I snatched up the handset, the index finger of my other hand hovering over the rotary dial like a hovercraft that solved the mysteries. And then I remembered I never got the dame's number. I am a bad detective. I said, well then, it's a good thing you're actually a Clambake judge. Ernest Clementine slapped me on the back and made a gesture that my grandmother would have found offensive. See you on the Zeppelin. If you weren't a mayor, my ghost grandmother would haunt your butt cheeks and force every toilet seat you ever sat on to be slightly moist, even if you tried to wipe it right before. I told him as he went. He responded by avoiding eye contact with me. As I walked out of Clementine's office, I stuck my clue-sucking straw into every one of its crevices with my eyes and tried to slurp up leaves as quietly and quickly as possible. No time to savor the flavor. On his desk I saw a potted plant, a trophy, and a note. I could tell by the bright magenta petals of the flower crowning the succulent that it was a beaver-tailed prickly pear, which meant the mayor had family in California. The trophy revealed that Ernest Clementine was an inter-varsity champion of sword fighting back in college, and that he never lost a duel against an opponent with exactly 2 arms. The note said that Ernest Clementine was part of a secret cult along with 4/5 of Innsmouth's population, and they were planning a human sacrifice to their unknowable god slumbering in a realm outside of space and time. They had chosen an outsider, recently moved into town to work over the summer. I didn't recognize the name, so a song I didn't like took its place in my memory and put itself on repeat for the next 2 hours. Mr. Nightmare? Greg? Are you coming along? Those Clambakes won't judge themselves now, Mayor Clementine said. I turned to him from the threshold and said, I know. Chapter 4. We jumped onto the Zeppelin as it passed by the mayor's rooftop. As we stepped into the gondola, there were chefs shoveling out clambakes to the citizens of Innsmouth, who had carried their dining tables up to their roofs, which were all steeply slanted. I heard a number of cutlery, flower vases, and visitors from out of town tumble off and clatter onto the cobblestone streets below. The locals solved this problem by nailing down their table legs and their shoes to the shingle, a proud tradition spanning 50 years. 50 years ago was when the first mayor of Innsmouth invented hammers for this town, while trying to murder her former college roommates with a wedge of stale cheese affixed to the end of an umbrella for interrupting her sleep if she played chess too loudly at 3 in the morning. This is why all hammers in Innsmouth are made of cheese, and why any hammer not made of cheese is called an imposter, and immediately set on fire as the law demands, Mayor Clementine said. You made that up, I said. I wish, Clementine replied with a sigh. He looked tired like a man forced to do unthinkable things just for a chance to chase his dreams. A man who'd often find himself lying on his bed in the dead of night wide awake, questioning whether any of the sacrifices that others had willingly or unwittingly made so he could get ahead had actually been necessary, or if he'd been living his whole life using the idea of necessity as an excuse to periodically unleash a horrid cruelty so deeply buried he was incapable of seeing its drooling maw's fangs protruding hungrily out of his own ribcage, stretching in all his heart's blind spots. He held that barren distance in the wasteland brown of his eyes, the same shade of brown as the pair of pants that had murdered my parents. As I watched the chefs bake their clams, I began writing unflattering comparisons about their technique, and mean words about their sartorial proclivities. But then I noticed something strange. A young, rail-thin man wearing ruffled, dirty pajamas like a destitute clown's apprentice was being pushed through the gondola by a large man who looked like a bad can of sardines, loaded to the gills with botulism. He had the kid in a hammerlock and moved him along like a very professional waiter who had just discovered a bag of dynamite that an old-timey gold prospector had left in the restaurant 49 years ago, and wanted the dynamite to explode far away without disturbing the dining experience of the patrons. Who is that miserable noodle man? I asked the mayor. Oh, that's, Bertram Fiddlywinks. Yes, Bertram Fiddlywinks, and he's here because he's an apprentice to a clown. Anyways, he's not a Clambake, so you need not concern yourself with him. You're right. As I was saying, Miss Dadway's Clambake gets the 9.5 from me, truly a brisk piece to cob. I dare to say it's just the juiciest of the bushel, not just moist, but plump and succulent too. Succulent. Suddenly, my mind shot far, far back to 5 minutes ago. And I remembered Mayor Clementine's desk, the beaver-tailed prickly pear, the sword-fighting trophy, and the third object, the folded paper next to an envelope. A note about cults, about human sacrifice, the sacrifice of an outsider I was hired by a dame to find, an outsider who was doomed to die in the sky to complete the last bloody step of a profane and eldritch ritual to grant unnatural prosperity and power to those wicked enough to carry it out. An outsider by the name of Legal Why Are You Doing This? Close the lid on your Clambake, you gray-eyed temptress, I shouted at Miss Dadway. It'll take more than presenting me with steaming, tender flesh to convince me to join your scandalous and trendy fish god cult. I whirled towards this pathetic spaghetti boy and shouted, Mr. Why are you doing this? I am Greg Nightmare, the Commodore of Detectives, and I have been sent by a dame to solve your murder. Or rescue you. It was one of those. The man blinked in surprise for a second and said, well, I sure am grateful, Mr. Nightmare. I think, but my name is Bert. It doesn't matter what your name is, I shouted. We have to hop on off this floating fart basket and mosey on out of town before anyone realizes I never passed the certification to be a Clambake judge. You do realize that impersonating Clambake judges is a crime punishable by death in this state. You do realize I've been sending here the whole time, said Mayor Clementine, as he drew his sword, along with every champion Clambaker in town. You just admitted to both a capital crime against the state as well as your desire to defy the designs of our gods, Greg. How did you forget such details about your current situation? Well, how could you... points a sword at me without letting me have one too. That's not fair. Clementine twirled his mustache pensively. I suppose you are right. As the Grand Archimandrite of the Order of Dagon, I cannot let you leave here alive. But as the mayor of Innsmouth, I must always conduct myself with a combination of honor and a murderous rage. Truly, my mind is oft wearied by the combined duties I have to these two pillars of my life, and yet I cannot imagine who I'd be without them. Very well. Miss Davley, lend Mr. Nightmare your sword, please. Thanks, clam sorceress, I told her as she handed me her sword from behind the counter. We should probably fight on the roof. I agree, we wouldn't want to put the Clambake at risk, the mayor said. We nodded at each other. We might be different people, so different that our meeting could only end in swords, but we both respected the sanctity of the New England Clambake. As we climbed to the top of the Zeppelin's hull, thunder rumbled and rain began to pour from the sky. I found myself thinking about all the choices, big and small, impulsive and measured, that I've made over the course of my life, how they all led to this moment. Ghostly clumps of my past drifted from the writhing gray mass of clouds racing all around us, memories of all those moments that, in their passing, branded me with that reality that I could never go back to who I'd been before. Memories of the war, of her, of the 21 times I failed my Clambake judge certifications, of the courage I had to steal from others after I discovered I had nothing left within me to pick myself back up and try again. From there to here, now only one stormy-skied sword fight standing between me and the solving of this mystery, and I had to ask myself, even if I prevailed here, would it be worth the cost? Our field of battle shall be here, Clementine said, gesturing at the center of the hall from across the opposite end before glancing back at me. Mr. Nightmare? Greg? Did you hear what I said? Huh? I mean, no, yes. Everything is fine and always was. I was just thinking about, sports cars. I'd sure like to drive one of those, because they're fast. I said, indeed, well, perhaps we should focus on the matter at hand, namely our swords. We drew our blades of lightning flash directly above us. He raised his sword in a salute. I made a gesture that his grandmother would find offensive. The clouds rolled by like they were late for free hot dogs, but didn't know exactly where they were being served. You seem like a decent fellow, I said, aside from the kidnapping and the human sacrifices and everything not related to Clambakes. And you will make a worthy sacrifice to Dagon, you confused little man, said the mayor, seemingly reveling as a storm began to rage all around us. He beckoned me and raised his guard. Oh yeah? I shot back. Then the time for talk was over, and the time for swords began. Chapter 5. Ernest Clementine fought like a tiger, if tigers had swords for teeth and claws. But I fought like a jellyfish. You've never seen a tiger fight a jellyfish, and in the same way, Ernest Clementine was not prepared for my technique. In the first 5 seconds of the fight, he stabbed me 3 times. He had a surprised look on his face, likely because he'd only lunged at me twice. I staggered back and smiled. I could taste the blood staining my teeth. Clementine blinked and said, Greg, you have fought valiantly, albeit incompetently. Surrender yourself, and I give you my word you will die with as much dignity as can be bestowed onto a human sacrifice to the horrifying eldritch beings we worship as gods. Wait, are you smiling? Azathoth's amorphous taint, he's smiling. Why are you smiling, Greg? Because I am not left-handed, I told him. And then I tossed my sword high into the air to catch it with my dominant hand and showed him the years of toil and sweat I spent to earn my minor in sword fights back in detective school all those years ago. Back before the war, before her, before the fire, back when I was a train conductor who never had to deal with the bridge being out all of a sudden, and full steam ahead was the only speed I knew. Back before anyone's words or laughter formed an iron cage between me and my dreams of performing those coveted accordion solos with the Danish Philharmonic Orchestra. As the sword reached the apex of its flight, a blinding flash of lightning struck, immediately followed by a ball of thunder. As I blinked away the after images, I saw the mayor lying on the floor, rain splattering all over his prone body, chunks of molten steel fused into his torso, skin blackened and charred by the heavens. What happened? He asked, in a voice as crackly and gross as his skin. I leaned down and quietly told him, I just invented a special move. Chapter 6. Just like that, the storm began to fade. The tang of ozone in the air was displaced by the welcoming, buttery, sweet aroma of Clambakes. Well, Mayor Clementine, it looks like you've finally been beaten at swords by now with a side of spicy brown mustard. The twitching figure nodded fitfully. Yes, I could have wanted to taste that. Hold on, 2 arms? Clementine said as he coughed up blood all over his mayoral sash. Is that the number of arms you've thought you've had this whole time? Well, duh, silly, I said, raising my sword to rest against his throat. I've got one right here holding this, and... I turned to look down at the left side of my body and saw something wrong. something so wrong you'd have to invent a whole new language just to describe how awful it was. And everyone would hate that language because it would sound as gross as the images the words referred to would look. So they'd outlaw that language, and we'd be back at square one without any words up to the task of describing the worst things. But as I looked down at the left side of my body, I saw something so horrible that Isaac Newton himself would be arrested if he tried to describe it in words. The scream ripped itself out of the deepest twist in my bowels, and I heard myself shriek these words out loud. "Dear sweet baby Moses, that's not my arm at all. What is this slavering, beaky thing growing out of my palm?" And as I said the word palm out, in 73 hours, hundreds of beavers began filling my pants. The beavers were ravenous, bursting through cotton twill and swarming outwards like a fireworks show made of large dam-building rodents. They devoured Mayor Clementine in a matter of parsecs, surged down and annihilated every clambaker inside of the gondola and a dozen more parsecs, then began chewing on the zeppelin itself, engorging themselves on its rubberized cotton skin as the hydrogen-filled gas bags within. I waved a good riddance to the town of Innsmouth as I now held onto the tails of a morbid and unsanitary sphere-shaped mass of bloated beavers stuck together through static electricity and rising lighter than air from all the hydrogen they consumed. I tried to pull down my pants and moon the citizens of Innsmouth as I soared over the horizon, but then I remembered that it was the moon's curse which obliterated my pants in the first place. And so I flew away into the sky, emancipated from my pants by the moon god's curse, which is different from how I normally solve my cases. Mother, Father, I finally avenged you. I whispered into the cold Atlantic wind as a makeshift hot beaver balloon carried me away to my next investigation. Thank you.